In 1986, a dive instructor named Kihachiro Aratake was searching for hammerhead sharks off the southern coast of Japan. He descended into the clear blue waters near Yonaguni Island, camera ready, expecting to photograph marine life. Instead, he found something that would challenge everything we think we know about ancient human history. Massive stone terraces, perfectly flat surfaces, right angles carved into rock, staircases descending into darkness, structures that looked impossibly geometric, impossibly deliberate, and they were sitting 30 meters below the ocean surface, where they had been hidden for thousands of years. Some archaeologists believe this is evidence of a lost civilization, an advanced society that existed more than 10,000 years ago, before the pyramids, before writing, before any complex culture we have ever documented. Others argue it's nothing more than natural rock formations shaped by geology and erosion. A trick of nature, a coincidence. The debate has raged for nearly 4 decades, and still no one can agree. This is the Yonaguni Monument, and depending on who you ask, it's either the most important archaeological discovery of the century, or nothing at all. Before we go further, some of the dates you'll hear in this video, particularly around sea level changes and the last ice age, reflect current scientific estimates. Like any area of active research, these figures continue to evolve as new evidence comes to light. Yonaguni Island sits at the far southwestern edge of Japan. It's remote, isolated, closer to Taiwan than to mainland Japan. The waters around the island are known for strong currents and crystal clear visibility. Ideal conditions for diving. Local dive operators regularly bring tourists to see hammerhead sharks that gather in the area. In the spring of 1986, Kihachiro Aratake was one of those dive instructors. He'd been exploring these waters for years, searching for new dive sites that would attract more visitors. On one particular dive, he descended to around 25 meters, and that's when he saw it. A massive stone structure rising from the seafloor. At first, he thought it might be a reef or a natural rock formation, but as he swam closer, he realized this was something different. The structure had flat surfaces, terraces stacked on top of each other like a stepped pyramid, sharp edges, right angles, what looked like carved steps leading down the face of the rock. He took photographs, told other divers. Word spread quickly. Within months, researchers and underwater archaeologists began arriving to investigate. The most prominent figure to take interest was Professor Masaaki Kimura, a marine geologist from the University of the Ryukyus in Okinawa. Kimura made his first dive to the site in 1992, and he spent the next 15 years documenting, measuring, and arguing that what lay beneath Yonaguni's waters was not a natural formation. It was, he claimed, the remnants of an ancient civilization. The main structure, now called the Yonaguni Monument, is enormous, roughly 150 meters long, 40 meters wide, and 27 meters tall. It's composed of sandstone and mudstone, common rock types in the region. But its shape is anything but common. The most striking feature is a series of massive terraces that descend in steps, like a Mesoamerican pyramid. The terraces are remarkably flat, as if they've been hewn smooth. There are sharp right angles where one level meets another, straight edges that run parallel for dozens of meters, channels that look like roads or pathways carved into the stone. On one section, there's what appears to be a staircase, 5 distinct steps, each about half a meter high, cut into the rock face. In another area, divers have found stone columns standing upright on the seafloor, blocks that look separated from the main structure, as if they were quarried and moved. Some researchers have reported seeing what might be carvings, geometric patterns, circles, lines, A few claim to have found images that resemble animals or human figures, though these are heavily debated and difficult to verify in underwater conditions. Kimura documented all of it. He created detailed maps. He measured angles. He compared the structure to known human-made sites around the world. And he became convinced this was not geology. This was architecture, but not everyone agreed. Geology is powerful. Over millions of years, natural forces can carve rock into shapes that look deliberate. Wind and water erosion create patterns. Freeze-thaw cycles split stone along natural plains. Tectonic activity fractures bedrock into geometric blocks. Tectonic activity fractures bedrock into geometric blocks. The rock that makes up the Yonaguni Monument is particularly prone to regular fracturing. This is the argument made by geologists who've studied the site. Researchers like Robert Schoch, a geology professor from Boston University, who visited Yonaguni in 1997 and came to a very different conclusion than Kimura. Schoch observed that the rock layers at Yonaguni are sedimentary. They were deposited in horizontal sheets over millions of years, and sedimentary rock naturally fractures along these bedding planes, the boundaries between layers. When tectonic forces push or tilt these layers, they break into regular flat sections. The result? Terraces, flat surfaces, right angles, all without human intervention. Schoch also pointed out that sandstone is highly susceptible to weathering along joint lines, natural cracks that form perpendicular to bedding planes. When these joints erode, they create vertical walls and sharp edges. According to Schoch, the Yonaguni structure can be explained entirely by these natural geological processes. The terraces are bedding planes. The right angles are joint fractures. The steps are differential erosion, where softer layers wore away faster than harder ones. He saw no evidence of tool marks, no signs of quarrying, no carvings that definitively indicated human shaping. Other geologists echoed this view. The consensus in the geological community has generally been that Yonaguni is a natural formation, striking and unusual, yes, but not artificial. And yet there are details that trouble even the skeptics. For one, the sheer concentration of geometric features in such a small area is statistically unusual. Natural formations do occur with flat surfaces and right angles, but they're typically isolated features, not clustered together in a single structure. At Yonaguni, you have multiple terraces stacked vertically, parallel channels running alongside each other, a staircase-like feature with 5 evenly spaced steps, upright stone columns standing on the seafloor. Each individual feature might be explainable by geology, but all of them together, in one place, that's harder to dismiss. Then there's the question of the site's orientation. Some researchers have noted that certain edges of the structure align with cardinal directions, north-south, east-west, with a precision that seems unlikely to occur by chance. Kimura also documented what he believed were tool marks, faint grooves and parallel lines on some of the flat surfaces. He argued these were evidence of human shaping. Skeptics counter that these grooves are just scratches from sediment or modern diver equipment. Without clear, undeniable tool marks, it's impossible to prove human involvement. But perhaps the strongest argument for the natural explanation is this. There are similar formations elsewhere in the region. Researchers have found other underwater rock structures off the coast of Yonaguni and nearby islands. Structures with flat surfaces and angular shapes, but clearly natural. The geology of the area produces these features regularly. So if nature can create something that looks geometric once, why couldn't it do so again at the main Yonaguni site? That's the geologist's case, and on paper it's compelling, but it doesn't answer every question. let's consider the possibility that Yonaguni is not natural, that it was shaped, at least in part, by human hands. What would that mean? And what evidence supports it? First, the structure itself. Kimura spent over a decade mapping the site in minute detail. He identified features that, he argues, cannot be explained by geology alone. One of the most striking is the main terrace complex. It consists of at least 5 distinct levels, each separated by vertical walls ranging from 1 to 3 meters in height. The terraces are flat and horizontal, and they're stacked with remarkable symmetry. Kimura claims that the spacing between these terraces is too regular to be coincidental. Natural erosion doesn't create evenly spaced layers. It erodes unevenly, based on rock hardness, water flow, and other variables. Then there's the staircase. 5 steps, each approximately half a meter high and half a meter deep, carved into the rock face. They're uniform in size. They descend in a straight line. Kimura argues that erosion doesn't create stairs. It creates slopes, channels, and irregular depressions. Stairs require intent. They require someone to say, I need to climb from this level to that level, so I'll carve steps. There's also a large, flat area at the top of the main structure, what Kimura calls plaza. It's roughly rectangular, about 20 meters wide, and remarkably level. Surrounding this plaza are what appear to be low stone walls or boundaries. In one section of the site, there's a triangular depression carved into the rock. It's smooth, symmetrical, and precisely shaped. Kimura believes this was intentionally cut, possibly as a decorative feature or a functional element like a drainage channel. And then there are the stone blocks. Scattered around the base of the main structure are massive rectangular stones, some weighing several tons. They look like building blocks that were quarried from the main formation and moved, either intentionally by humans or possibly dislodged by ancient seismic activity. But here's the thing. If these blocks were simply broken off by earthquakes, you'd expect them to fall randomly. Instead, they're positioned in ways that suggest placement. Some are standing upright, others are aligned parallel to each other. Kimura also points to what he calls roads, flat, narrow channels that run alongside the structure, as if they were pathways for people to walk. He's documented post holes, circular depressions that might have once held wooden posts or pillars. He's identified areas that could have been quarry sites, where stone was extracted to build other structures. And then there are the alleged carvings. Kimura claims to have found geometric symbols etched into the stone, circles, crosses, V-shapes. He's also reported what might be an image of a turtle and another that resembles a human face. Skeptics argue these carvings are pareidolia, humans seeing patterns where none exist, like seeing faces in clouds. And without clear, detailed photographs, it's hard to verify Kimura's claims. But let's assume, for a moment, that Yonaguni is artificial, that it was built by humans. When and who? If the Yonaguni Monument is man-made, it forces us to confront an uncomfortable question. Who could have built it? Because the timeline doesn't make sense. The last time the area where Yonaguni sits was above sea level was during the last ice age, specifically before the end of the last glacial maximum, which occurred around 20,000 to 12,000 years ago. During the ice age, global sea levels were roughly 120 meters lower than they are today. Vast amounts of water were locked in ice sheets, exposing land that is now submerged. Yonaguni Island was connected to Taiwan and mainland Asia by a land bridge. The area where the monument now sits was dry land, a coastal plain, possibly inhabited by small groups of hunter-gatherers. Then, starting around 15,000 years ago, the climate began to warm, ice sheets melted, sea levels rose. By around 10,000 years ago, the area where the Yonaguni Monument stands was underwater. So if the structure is artificial, It had to have been built before 10,000 years ago, possibly much earlier. And that's a problem, because 10,000 years ago, there were no known advanced civilizations. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, the oldest known monumental architecture, was being built around this time, but it's a stone temple, not a massive carved terrace complex. There's no evidence of large-scale quarrying, precision stone carving, or urban planning anywhere in the world at that time. Humans were hunter-gatherers, small groups, mobile. They built temporary shelters, not massive stone monuments that required coordinated labor and engineering knowledge. Yet if Yonaguni is artificial, that's exactly what would have been required. You'd need teams of workers to carve the stone, engineers to plan the layout, leaders to organize the labor, a stable society capable of sustaining such an effort over years, possibly decades. And you'd need tools, stone tools for carving, possibly copper or bronze tools, though metallurgy didn't develop until thousands of years later. You'd also need a reason to build it. Temples are built for religion, palaces for rulers, fortifications for defense. What was Yonaguni? Kimura has speculated that it might have been a ceremonial center, a place for religious rituals. Others have suggested it could have been a palace, a fortress, or even an astronomical observatory. But without any artifacts, no pottery, no tools, no human remains, it's impossible to know. And that absence of artifacts is one of the strongest arguments against the artificial hypothesis. If humans built Yonaguni and lived there, where is the evidence of their presence? Where are the tools they used? The broken pottery? The remains of their homes? Kimura argues that any artifacts would have been washed away or buried under sediment over 10,000 years. The ocean is a harsh environment. Organic materials decay. Even stone tools could be scattered by currents. But critics say that if Yonaguni was an important site, a temple, a city, there should be something left. And the fact that nothing has been found is damning. Still, there's another possibility, one that's even more controversial. What if the structure wasn't built 10,000 years ago? What if it's much older? Some researchers have suggested that Yonaguni could date back 20,000 years or more, to a time when sea levels were even lower, and the site was far inland. If that's the case, it would predate every known civilization by thousands of years. It would suggest that advanced societies existed long before we ever imagined. But there's no evidence to support this. No dating of the rock itself, because you can't date stone the way you can date organic material. And without artifacts, there's no way to establish a timeline. So we're left with speculation. And that's all it is, speculation. Nearly 40 years after its discovery, the Yonaguni Monument remains one of the most debated sites in underwater archaeology. There have been dozens of expeditions, hundreds of dives, thousands of photographs and measurements, academic papers arguing both sides, and still there is no consensus. Part of the problem is access. Yonaguni is remote. The currents around the island are strong, making diving dangerous. The water temperature is cold. Visibility, while generally good, can be poor depending on conditions. Only a limited number of researchers have been able to study the site in detail, and underwater archaeology is expensive. It requires specialized equipment, trained divers, and funding that's hard to come by for a controversial site with no clear historical significance. The Japanese government has shown little interest in funding large-scale investigations. There's no push to excavate or preserve the site. It's not a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's just there. A curiosity for divers and a point of debate for academics. Without more research, the questions remain unanswered. Could the structure be a hybrid, partially natural, partially shaped by humans? It's possible. Some geologists have suggested that early humans might have found a naturally occurring rock formation and modified it. carving steps or flattening surfaces to make it more functional. That would explain why the structure looks geometric but lacks clear tool marks. Nature did most of the work. Humans just refined it. But even that theory is speculative, and without artifacts to prove human presence, it's impossible to confirm. There's also the question of why this particular site has generated so much attention, while other similar formations in the region have been largely ignored. Researchers have documented several other underwater rock structures near Yonaguni and neighboring islands, formations with flat surfaces, right angles, and terrace-like features. They're clearly natural. No one debates that. So why is the main Yonaguni structure different? Is it because it's larger, more complex? Or is it simply because Professor Kimura championed it as artificial and the controversy drew attention? Perhaps the truth is uncomfortable. We see what we want to see. If you believe ancient civilizations existed before recorded history, Yonaguni looks like evidence. The terraces become plazas, the right angles become walls, the steps become staircases. If you believe geology explains everything, Yonaguni looks like rock. The terraces become bedding planes, the angles become joint fractures, the steps become erosion. Both interpretations are consistent with the evidence. Both can be argued with sincerity and rigor. And that's the frustrating beauty of Yonaguni. It sits right on the edge of what we can explain. It's ambiguous enough that neither side can definitively prove their case, and ambiguous enough that both sides can claim victory. In the end, the Yonaguni Monument might remain a mystery not because we lack the technology or knowledge to solve it, but because the evidence simply isn't conclusive. Nature is capable of extraordinary things, and so are humans. Perhaps Yonaguni is a reminder that sometimes we can't tell the difference. So what do we take away from the Yonaguni Monument? If it's natural, it's a humbling reminder of how powerful geological forces can be. A testament to the fact that nature doesn't need human hands to create order and symmetry. It does so on its own, through processes that operate over timescales we can barely comprehend. If it's artificial, it's something far more profound. It means that 10,000 years ago, or perhaps even earlier, humans were capable of engineering feats we never credited them with, that they built structures we've only just discovered, that they lived, worked, and created in places now lost beneath the ocean. And if that's true, how much more have we missed? The oceans cover 70% of the Earth's surface. We've explored less than 5% of the seafloor. There are vast underwater landscapes we've never seen, ancient coastlines submerged when the Ice Age ended and sea levels rose. How many other structures are down there, waiting to be found? Yonaguni might not be unique. It might be one site among many, remnants of coastal societies that thrived during the Ice Age and vanished when the waters rose. Or it might be nothing more than an oddly shaped rock that captured our imagination. The truth is, we don't know, and maybe we never will. But perhaps that's not a failure. Perhaps it's an invitation to keep searching, to keep questioning, to remember that history is not a settled thing. It's a puzzle with missing pieces, and every so often we find one that doesn't quite fit where we expected. The Yonaguni Monument challenges us, not because it proves anything, but because it refuses to give us easy answers. And sometimes the most important discoveries are the ones that leave us wondering. Thank you for watching Hidden Archives. If you enjoyed this exploration of the Yonaguni Monument, please like and subscribe for more mysteries that challenge what we think we know about the past. Let me know in the comments, do you think Yonaguni is natural or artificial? And what other underwater structures should we investigate next? See you in the next archive.